All right, namaskar and good morning to all of you. So, retreat about Yog Sutras, Yog Darshan. So, we started about 4 months ago this a series of Yog Darshan lectures. So, we're going to continue with that. And if you're joining for the first time, just remember that even today, whatever you learn, you'll be able to apply it. But if you have a book, you'll be able to go back and study. And we do have it recorded also, the previous retreats, so you can go back and look at those also, wherever you need help, or you can always call me also if you're interested in learning it at a deeper level. And I recommend this book because most of the students have this book. Okay, so it says Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So original author is Rishi Patanjali. More than 2500 years ago, Rishi Patanjali lived on this earth. He's a Anshavatar, God incarnate. And he's the one who systematized yoga for students of his time. And even now we find this invaluable. But this book is translated by Swami Sachidananda in English. So you will find this very useful. So 4 chapters, altogether 196 sutras, divided into 4 chapters. First chapter is called Samadhi Pad. Second chapter, Sadhana Pad. Third chapter, Vibhuti Pad. And fourth chapter, Kaivalya Pad. And in this series of lectures, we are on our second chapter. And we'll start with verse number 23 today. The way this seminar goes, because it's being recorded, you can always go back and listen to it. But if you have a question, write it down. Towards the end of my first lecture, we'll have about 15 minutes for question answers. And then we'll have a 15 minutes of break, then another lecture, and then last 15 minutes again for question answers. Okay, so this way it goes smoothly, and I'll try to finish as much as I can without skipping the main points of the sutras. Okay, so let's start with some prayers so that our mind is fully concentrated on the topic which we are trying to cover. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Om Bhuvah Swaha Tatsavitra Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat Astoma Satgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityurma Amritam Gamya. Om Sahna Bhavatu Sahna Bhunaktu Saviryam Karvavahi Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi. Om Shanti 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 Om. So the Yoga Darshan is also called a yogic philosophy. So we practice yoga, but the philosophy is the backbone for practice. Philosophy. That's why this philosophy is needed also. So Hatha Yoga needs the Raj Yoga, and Raj Yoga needs the Hatha Yoga. This yogic philosophy helps us understand our unique nature and our goal and purpose of life. So we need to know the goal and purpose of our life. Why are we practicing? It enables us to find answers to very fundamental questions. What is a human being? What is the meaning and purpose of life? How do my mind, body, and consciousness relate to each other? We use these terms often. Is there a way of living in this world happily and joyfully? So when we expand our practice and we expand this knowledge, they help each other. The practice which we do, that enhances, and the knowledge which we do, which we have, that enhances too. So that's why sitting down and studying the words of these saints, these yogis, very important. Each and every word. There is no extra word put in these verses. So that's why I tell you, write them down or at least remember the meaning of these sutras. Again, if you don't know, sutra is a form of writing. Just like a mantra is a form of writing, shlok is a form of writing, sutra is also a form of writing where there's no extra word there. All the extra words have been taken out. The yogis, they try to memorize these sutras. It's not hard to memorize all 196 sutras. Challenge yourself. That's how your memory becomes better too. Challenge how many you can remember. Okay, so let's start with verse number 23 today. Swami Shaktayoho Savrup Uplabdhi Hetu Sanyoga. Swa means one's own. That means objective world. Swa. Swami means Ishwar, the master of this objective world. Swami, Lord. Shaktayo, Shakti, the power. Savarup, one's essential nature. Uplabdhi, achieved. Realization. Hetu means the cause or the means. Sanyog is the union, like a complete union, oneness. So the union of the Shakti and the Shakti of the Ishwar is the means of experiencing our essential nature. We want to know who we are. So what are we uniting with what? This is what's mentioned over here. So that's why last time when we ended this seminar, I said 3 words are very important in this verse. Swashakti, Swami Shakti, and Savrup. We've been talking about that we are extension of the Ishwar, the God. At the core of our existence, our real nature. At the core, we are as pure as Ishwar. But still, at this stage in our evolution, we are not able to experience our essential nature. We have no awareness of our pure and pervasive intelligence. Why? Because we are so dependent on our mind. We want to experience everything through our mind. We are unable to comprehend the depth of our own being and even the vastness of this phenomenal world. But we can do it if our mind is pure. If we raise the intuitive quality of our mind, because all those vasanas, all those sanskars, they are clouding our mind. So that's why over here, these 3 terms, Swashakti, Swami Shakti, and Savrup. It's very important to understand. Swashakti means the power of our mind. That is Swashakti. With the help of the mind, we are going to reach there. So that's why the cloudedness of this mind, the mind which is full of dust and the dirt of the karmas, we got to clean it up. We got to make it pristine. That is a Swashakti. the power of our mind and the world associated with it. So this world is not bad. This objective world is not bad. It is not a hindrance. What is really hindering us? Our own clouded mind. And Swami Shakti, the power of the Ishwar. This whole world is associated with that power. Who created this world? Ishwar did. This world is not our enemy. If you look at it from that sense. And then Savrup means our own essential nature. Our own essential nature, our Atma. So from here we can conclude the meaning of this sutra is from the union of the power of our mind and the power of Ishwara, we attain the knowledge pertaining to our essential nature. From the union of the power of our mind. So that mind, Rishi Patanjali told us earlier that mind is a gem. Mind is a devata. All the mantras in the Vedas, they say mind is a devata. But we have made it dirty. Water element is a devata, but we have made it dirty. Air element is a devata. We have made it dirty. The same way this mind of ours, which is a devata, and we have made it dirty. So that's why from the union of the power of the mind and the power of the Ishwar, we attain the knowledge pertaining to our essential nature. So mind is a tool to be used to know yourself. So attaining knowledge of our essential nature, that is called a Savrup Upalabdhi in Sanskrit. And becoming established in it, Savrup Pratishtha. That is the reason we are born. So in simple English, to know ourselves, we are born. That is the purpose of life, to know ourselves. And how to know yourself? When we can absorb your mind into the God. That is a goal of sadhana, yogic sadhana. So the real goal is to remove the layers of the dust so that the revealing power of the mind can shine forth. It's a self-shining gem. So we got to make sure that we understand this, and then he will give us the practices to do it little later. And today we are going to go through some practices also. What do we really need to do? How can we reclaim our pristine identity? Because we have to fix our fundamental flaw. Right now, if you don't really know who we are, find out how come. Make it a full-time endeavor. More important than anything else, that I want to know myself, because that is why I came here. And how come I don't know? I spent so much time knowing the temporary things. Even today we spend out of 24 hours, how much time just to know the temporary things? And the real goal we have forgotten. So just remember these three terms separately, and this idea which he is trying to bring out for us is very clear then. So according to Patanjali, we do not need to reject the power of our mind. That is the message. Mind is not a dirty thing. Mind is a gem. Mind is our most valuable asset. We must nurture it by connecting it to its source. That's why Lord Krishna told Arjuna again and again, give your mind and intellect to me, and you just do only your work. Simple message in Bhagavad Gita also. Connect it. So as soon as the mind recognizes the need for illuminating itself with the nurturing and self-reflecting light of its creator, it really drops its defenses. The arrogance, the ego, it just goes away. Because when it sees that who's the master, who's the Lord, who's the Swami, it just absorbs into it. But we have to learn how to do it because it sees itself correctly, sees the power of a seeing seated in its own core. And that's what Savrup Upalabdhi is. But what is really preventing us from doing it? Because from this verse, it looks so simple. But how come we haven't gotten to it? What is preventing us? What kind of a courage we really need? Deciding to surrender to Ishwar. That is the subject of next sutra. Sutra number 24. Tasya hetu avidya. Tasya means of that. Hetu means cause. Avidya means ignorance. The cause of that is ignorance, avidya. And we have talked about avidya last time. What is this avidya? What is this ignorance? Because in our ultimate analysis, our mind is not our mind, but Ishwar's mind. Where is that power coming from? Who is the owner of all? Ishwar. Out of compassion, Ishwar gave us a self-luminous mind. And in its self-revealing light, we can comprehend our essential nature. Our claim to be the owner of our mind is the primal error. Our mind. It's given by Ishwar. It's a gift given by Ishwar. Then we'll see the light properly. That's how we can surrender. All these powers which are given to me, they are at the end Ishwar's, the Lord's. He is the Swami. So in the previous sutra, Patanjali tells us that the way to remedy this problem is to connect this weak, frail mind to its source, Ishwar. Ishwar is the fountainhead of the power and intelligence. And out of avidya, the ignorance, we have forgotten it. And as a practical matter, avidya is the subtlest and the most potent of all our sanskars, our impressions. You remember the 5 things we talked about last time? Avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesh. So what was the root of the other 4? Avidya, ignorance. We forgot our real nature. Our sense of I amness got so developed that we forgot our real nature. We spend our entire life complying with the demands of avidya, ignorance. We are constantly engaged in defending our self-identity. My name, my position, my gender, my status. That's all came out of avidya. We are happy when we are succeeding in achieving the objects of our desires and unhappy when we fail. That's avidya. And likewise, we are very happy when we succeed in getting rid of what we dislike and unhappy when we fail. That's all avidya. We should know that nothing stays forever. That is vidya. So we got to analyze this avidya for reaching our ultimate goal. We got to see where this avidya, where this ignorance is stopping me achieving that ultimate goal. So there have been a lot said about it, a lot written about it, but over here, for today's purposes, in summary, I'll tell you that embracing avidya results in the birth of our mind, like my mind. Okay, that this came out of avidya. Under the influence of avidya, the mind rejects its connection with Mahatattva. Mahatattva means the infinite pool of intelligence and creativity. We just want to stay only in our little pool. So that's why Rishi Patanjali is telling us, get rid of the vrittis, yoga, chitta vritti nirodha, and replace it with a pure and pristine self-luminous mind. That is the goal of a yogic sadhana. Because vrittis are all dirt on our mind. Okay, so that is a definition of yoga, and that's a definition of yogic goal. Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. It's not getting rid of the mind, getting rid of the vrittis. As soon as our mind faces the luminosity of Ishwar, avidya melts away. This avidya does not have that power. We have given the power to avidya by forgetting who we are. This is termed as, in a, philosophically, it's said, buddhi sattva, pure essence of Ishwar's inner luminosity. So the process leading to self-realization is simple. It's not that difficult, actually. I always tell you, to achieve something in this world is more difficult. Achieving, knowing yourself, because this is what you are, how can that be difficult? It's very simple. Surrender your mind to Ishwar. That's all. Surrendering our messy mind and receiving a fresh, self-luminous mind. To me, I think it sounds like a pretty excellent bargain. Surrender that messy mind. But in practice, we are reluctant to do it. And how to overcome this reluctance? That's explained in the next sutra. So I've been telling you that sutras, they are connected. If we understand each sutra properly, we find the answer to this problem in the next sutra. But do not forget what we have learned in the past, though. You say, garland of beautiful sutras, garland. So that's why I'm not going in detail into avidya. We talked about avidya quite a bit. And over here, he's telling us, because of the avidya, you are there. Okay, so remember what we studied, but today just try to understand what we are going through in these verses. So number 25, tad abhavat sanyog abhavaha hanam tad drishe kavalyam. Tad means that. That means over here avidya, the ignorance. Abhavat, absence, non-existence. Sanyog abhava, absence of union, or complete absence of union. See, sanyog means complete union, abhav means absence. Hanam, the state free of sorrow, like a nullification. Tad means that. Drishe, the seeing power of the seer. Kavalyam, absolute state, the state of consciousness free from all conditioning. Kavalyam. So, from the absence of that avidya, because we are trying to get rid of the avidya, because that's what's stopping us. So, from the absence of that avidya comes the absence of mingling. What is this mingling? Mingling of the consciousness with our mind. That is freedom, the absolute state of power of seeing. So, this sutra actually is a summary of the last 5 sutras. How to get rid of it? The avidya, this is to do it. So, from the absence of avidya comes the absence of mingling. So, consciousness with our mind. So, in Sutra 220, we saw the power of a seeing is the seer, and we are that seer. At our core, we are pure. And we are heavily dependent on the mind, a mind conditioned by its sanskars. As long as our mind and core being are intermingled, we have no access to our inner luminosity or to our intrinsic joy. So we must distinguish one from the other. That's why we got to see who is the seer and what it's saying. So intermingling makes us confused. So that's why in verse 23, Patanjali is telling us that we have to reclaim our self-luminous mind. We got to know the difference. The seer and the seen. And in 24, he is reminding us that we are attached to our ignorance and we are reluctant to let go of the self-identity. So here in this sutra, Patanjali is leading us to recognize our core being, seeing power of the seer. We are human beings, amazing creatures. Our actions are always purpose driven. Our purpose can be divided into 2 categories. No matter who the person is, where the person is, what the action is, it is there's 2 forces behind our actions: avoidance of pain and acquisition of pleasure. That's why we do the actions. Sukh prapti, dukh nivriti. As soon as we renounce avidya, mental contaminates, we can see it more clearly. Otherwise, it's just confusing for us. Because the same mind that was once the source of bondage, now becomes the source of freedom when we can see it clearly. This kind of a clarity means who's the seer and what the seer is seeing. This comprehension arises. And this comprehension from that buddhi sattva is called vivek khyati. That's another term. We talked about it earlier and we'll talk about it more. Vivek khyati. Vivek khyati is almost like in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna used that term too. Vivek khyati. It's equivalent to the intuition which we talk about in English. Vivek khyati. In fact, there's another scripture which we do on a weekly basis. Vivek chudamani. So it's the same Vivek, discernment. So we are able to see that we are the seer, the seeing power itself. With the dawn of Vivekyati, the darkness of ignorance and our mental creations fed by ignorance vanish. Okay, this vivekhyati. We are established in our essential nature, essential self. Our worldly dependence on worldly objects and the experiences pertaining to them, they come to an end. And that is called Kaivalya. We experience this Shakti. And this is why it's so important to surrender ourselves to the Ishwar, who is the Swami of it all. And how does that happen? Through practice and contemplation. Because we really need that highest level of clarity and comprehension of our pure consciousness. And Patanjali is fully aware that in most cases, the state of realization does not last that long. Because in the initial stage, sure, there is a glimpse of this, but this does not stay for too long. We vaguely remember how it feels to be in that state. Even the very serious meditators. But we don't know how to capture it. So we felt it, we had a glimpse about it, because we are only used to capturing the worldly objects. This experience we cannot capture. And that's why we fall down from our practice also sometimes. Many times before becoming fully established in it. And that's why he is explaining this further in the next verse for us. How to really establish, how to stay in that vivekhyati state, even while working in this objective world. Not get lost, not slip away, not enter into this ignorance further. He says, vivekhyati avipalvaha hanah upaya. Again, the vivekhyati, the dawning of discrimination, the rise of the power of discrimination, the intuition. Avipalvaha, unshakable, not here and there, not temporary, but unshakable, which cannot be washed away, which cannot be taken away by this worldly success or worldly failure. That which cannot succumb to chaos. That is avivalpa. It's a very, very powerful Sanskrit word. Avipalva. Hana upaya, the means of nullifying sorrow. Hana means avoidance or nullification. Upaya means the means. So Rishi Patanjali is saying, unshakable, discerning knowledge is the means of nullifying the misery resulting from the avidya. Driven union of Purusha and Prakriti. So I have just opened it up a little bit more. Some of these words are not given in there. Let me read it again. Unshakable discerning knowledge is the means of nullifying the misery resulting from the avidya. So how did the avidya come? Avidya came, union of the Purusha and the Prakriti. Because we see that even though the initial stage of meditation does not destroy the subtle causes of disturbance in our mind, but it helps us a little though. It brings a little peace inside us. Even a few minutes of meditation. But when we can practice it even a more serious level, That's what he's talking about. Every time we meditate, mind is charged with illuminating peaceful energy. Every time we meditate. Doesn't matter how we meditate, but as long as we meditate. And about the meditation, we learned it in the first chapter. In Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna talks about meditation. The whole chapter, chapter number 6, Atam Sanyam Yoga, he says meditate, meditate, meditate. It's not a modern buzzword. It's a Vedic way to get out of this ignorance. Because every time we meditate, the mind is charged with illuminating peaceful energy. And what happens that our mind's ability to stay in that state increases. Meditation is not to bring your blood pressure at a normal state. Meditation is to know yourself. A meditative atmosphere leaves no room for disturbing, stupefying, and distracting tendencies which come out of the sanskaras, deep-rooted sanskaras of afflictions. And what are the afflictions? Avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesh, those are all afflictions. They really don't have any power over the meditator or meditator's mind. Rishi Patanjali has been talking about it right from the beginning. In Samadhi Pad also, in a Kriya Yoga also, in the beginning of this chapter. But no matter what these rishis are telling us, ultimately we have to practice it. Meditation is not something we just only talk about. Meditation is which we practice every day. Because this mind of ours, it has a tendency of giving us like a tsunami of the vrittis. So when the tsunami of mental tendencies which originate from the vast field of afflictions, no matter how big of the tsunami is, but if the mind is still peaceful and illuminating in that atmosphere, the mind again becomes settled. Okay, so tsunami is coming from outside, but inside the yogi's mind is peaceful with the help of meditation. Tsunami doesn't have any effect. We become established in our true nature through a steady practice and a constant awareness of life's purpose. Got to always remember that. Otherwise, it's very easy to get drifted away. What is my life's purpose? Keep one eye on that and another eye in doing your duties. And we know that these vrittis, they could be, we learned about that also in the first chapter, they could be fully grown, they could be dormant, but we need to get rid of them with the help of this. So in the light of Vivekhyati, we begin to see inner reality ourselves and the external world as they are. We really learn how to, we have created a beautiful bridge between inner and outer, and we can live this life beautifully. We really learn how to see this world as a divine manifestation. We don't see that us versus the world. We start seeing it's like a oneness. So unity in this multiplicity. That's what happens with Vivekhyati. We feel Ishwar's intrinsic power In Sattva, Rajas and Tamas also, as the scriptures say, a ghor and ghor Shakti. This is a God's Shakti. In the destruction also there's a God's Shakti. So it is a Ishwar's Shakti which is manifesting in everything and everyone. We experience life as a gift, and we are grateful for this primordial Prakriti of Ishwar, who gave us this gift. And we got to make an effort, self-effort pertaining to Yoga Sadhana, which will conclude with the Vivek Shakti. In other words, pure and pristine power of discernment. Okay, you can give any name you want to, but this is the closest English translation of Vivek Shakti is. Actually, let me tell you, you are familiar with the terms Videha and Prakriti Lay. This kind of a practice brings us to the state of Videha and Prakriti Lay. Videha. A yogi to that level, we are fully master of the body. Prakriti Lay, yogi to that level, master of the Prakriti also. Or we can, this kind of a person lives as a Jivan Mukta. Free here and now. And after death, after leaving this body, reside in the Ishwar's intrinsic Prakriti. And that's what's called Savrup Pratishtha. And how do we know whether we have gained this or not? This Vivek. And that our mind is permanently lit by its self-luminous discerning power or not? That is the subject of a next sutra. But Rishi Patanjali does not elaborate much over here. That's why it's very important to study other scriptures also alongside. Because maybe Rishi Patanjali, his student, they were all well versed in it. So he only mentioned like this, Tasya Saptadha Prant Bhumi Pragya. Tasya means the yogi who has attained Vivekyati. So normally Tasya means he. But the yogi who has attained Vivekyati, or the power of discernment a person has attained, Saptadha, sevenfold. That means with the 7 distinct tiers. So it's not a jumping from here to there. It does take practice. That's why it's called a yoga sadhana. It's a path. Prant Bhumi, the furthest frontier of Vivekyati. Literally, it means the state beyond which there is no cognitive knowledge. Prant Bhumi, this is the end of it. Knowledge par excellence. Prant Bhumi. Because Prant really means the final frontier, the extreme limit. So like if somebody goes to a school, what is the last degree I can attain? How high I can go? So this Prant is the final frontier. Bhumi means the ground. Pragya means revealing knowledge, the light of knowledge, without a shadow. Pure illuminating knowledge. So his discerning knowledge has 7 spheres. The furthest frontier is Pragya. So there are stages, and the last one is Pragya. That's what he's trying to tell us. So quickly, I'll give you the names of the 7. And we do have a recorded lecture on it in our from our Wednesday's classes, where I elaborated on all 7. But today I'll just give you the 7 names so that you know what are those. The first one is Shubhecha. Icha means a desire, Shubh means virtuous. All your desires become virtuous now, not worldly. You still have the desires, but they are virtuous. You want to live for others, you want to help others. You are not looking for your own comfort or your own gain, any which way your gain, whether it's at a monetary or respect wise. No gain in your mind. You just want to only give. Subhecha. Vicharna. You reflect on it more and more. Whenever you want to study something, you study. How I can attain that pragya, vivekhyati. Tanumanasi. That mind of yours is looking at the subtlest of the subtlest things. Because God is so subtle. Ishwar is so subtle because it's everywhere, but we cannot see it. So you are making your mind, taking your mind towards the subtlety of this world. Number 4, the fourth tier on this ladder is Sattvapati. Just like I talked about before, you see the Sattva, the truth, the essence. Also Sankti. You just don't want to have any idea. I automatically don't have any idea about the objects. Non-ideation. Padarth abhavna. And the seventh is Turyaga. Turyaga means the fourth level of consciousness, which is called Samadhi also. So over here, Rishi Patanjali is talking about these 7 stages. So Saptadha, the sevenfold, 7 distinct tiers or the steps towards, then ultimately furthest is the Pragya. So Pragya comes from Samadhi. And Samadhi is where you have dissolved. It's a union between you and God. Okay, so tasya saptada prant bhumi pragya. So it's very, in this context of this sutra, it is important to recall this concept. And even recall the concept of the samadhi which we talked about. It is directly related with the samadhis which we learned in the first chapter. You remember? Rishi Patanjali divided the range of samadhi into 2 main categories. Remember that? Sampargyat and asampargyat. For the sake of simplicity, I would say sampargyat samadhi as the lower samadhi. Because in the lower samadhi, we are fully aware of the object of meditation, the process of meditation, and ourselves as meditator. That's why it's called Sampargyat Samadhi. Sampargyat Samadhi means Samadhi with the cognition. And we saw that Sampargyat Samadhi is further divided into 4 parts. Vitark Anugat, Vichar Anugat, Anand Anugat, Asmita Anugat. Go back to that. Try to understand it at a deeper level with what you are learning right now. And this samadhi is also known as a sabij samadhi because you still have the seeds of the sanskaras in your mind. Sure, we are free from the roaming tendency of our mind, but extremely subtle and virtually untraceable mental impressions still exist. And we need to get rid of those too. But mental impressions vanish completely when we land into the state of consciousness as asampargyat samadhi. And loosely it's translated as a higher samadhi. So lower samadhi and higher samadhi. It is a supra-cognitive state in which we are free, not only from the roaming tendencies of our mind, but also from the virtually untraceable mental impressions also. That's why this samadhi is called Nirbij Samadhi. So I want you to understand the 7 stages in this context also. So you saw in chapter 1, verse number 48, that this state is described as pragya. The reason I'm bringing it back to you, because this pragya word was used over there too. And this is the highest yogic achievement. Over here, samadhi as a process comes to an end. And the experience gained in the state of pragya nullifies the effects of our sanskars. So if somebody says, how do I get rid of the sanskaras? Got to start from the meditation. Reach to the samadhi. Keep on practicing more and more until you reach here, where you see only the purity. Because this is the purest and highest state of inner illumination. Pragya is intrinsic to Ishwar's Prakriti. When we are established in this state, we are established in Ishwar's Prakriti. Our mind is no more our mind. Whose mind is it? Ishwar's mind. Our soul is no longer our soul. Because we have come to an unshakable realization that our individualized consciousness is only an extension of Ishwar. We don't have any separate identity. And even our essential joy is essentially the joy of Ishwar. That's why a yogi does all the karmas for the joy of God. My joy does not matter. It's my God's joy, my Swami's joy. Whatever makes him happy, I'm ready to do it. See, the notion of I and mine, which we talk about in other scriptures also, it has dissolved at this point, pragya point. Because beyond this point is not a comprehension at the level of mind, because mind is not your mind. A yogi has reached this indescribable, unfathomable state. And this happens only with the grace of God and the Guru. Because we see ourselves through the eyes of Ishwar. Experience ourselves through the heart of Ishwar. So remember these 7 stages. Remember the goal. And we got to just keep on practicing. So this is all we need to know right now about this. I mean, there's a lot of stuff written on it by different philosophers, but I think the basic idea is practice. And now starting from verse number 28, he's going to tell us at this point, what can we do? How can we practice? Because of practice we must do, but what to do? He's going to go into it starting from verse number 28. Yog ang anushtanat ashuddhi kshaya gyan deepti avivek khyati vivek khyati. Yoga, the practice leading to mastery over the roaming tendencies of the mind. So yoga really means over here the practice. Ang means the limbs, the components. Anushtanat, the practice. Ashuddhi kshaya, destruction of impurities. See, ashuddhi is impurity, contamination. Kshaya means destruction, elimination. Gyan deepti, the shine of knowledge. light of knowledge. Avivek khyati, domain of unshakable discernment. So our word is over here, like from every direction. In every respect, in every sense. So you do not get shaken up. That's how yogi does not get shaken up by the outer circumstances, because the discerning knowledge is complete in every sense. It's not that it's here, not there. It's not today or tomorrow. It's from every direction all the time. Avivek khyati. So the practice of the limbs of yoga destroys impurities. Thereafter, knowledge continues to brighten all the way to Vivek Khyati, the domain of unshakable discernment. Okay, so over here, Rishi Patanjali is telling us how important is the practice of yoga. It will take us towards the Vivek Khyati. The Vivek Khyati is the one which we need. Okay, so he says practice of yoga. Because we need to get rid of our old mind. This practice will help us get rid of the old mind, because the old mind was filled with fear, aversion, attachment, distorted self-identity, ignorance, and the vast field of impressions. Lot of afflictions in it. We need to get rid of that kind of a mind. And the yogic practice will help us. Because a yogi who has reached the level of purity and union is called Videha, that's what we learned, and Prakriti. But we need to make an effort to clean our mind of its long cherished sanskaras. And that's why in the beginning of this chapter, Rishi Patanjali gave us a very simple technique, Tapuswadhyaya Ishwar Pranidhan. Heart of yoga, yogic practice. Okay, so when all the components of yoga work together harmoniously, we achieve our goal. Harmoniously. So in the following sutras now, Rishi Patanjali is describing the components of yoga, and he'll show us how their mutually supportive functions help us achieve Vivek Khyati. So remember now, this sutra is telling us the practice of yoga takes you towards Vivek Khyati, and Vivek Khyati is the one, that is the stage where we can see it all clearly. We are united, we are free, we are liberated from this Prakriti. Okay, so starting from 29, let's just, we still have some time, right, Jyoti? We have some time, okay. So let me take you towards these angs. This is also called a Ashtang. You have heard the Ashtang yoga. So Ashtang, this Ashtang word for yoga, Rishi Patanjali gave more than 2000 years ago. This is what Ashtang yoga is. Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharna, Dhyan, Samadhya, Ashtangani. Try to memorize this also. Somebody says, you are a yoga student. What are the 8 parts of yoga? Okay, so Ashtang Yoga. Yam. Yam is the self-control. It also means withstanding the force of craving. Restraint, yam. Niyam, keeping a firm resolve, niyam. Or it's also called observance. You have taken a vow, stick with it. Asan, the physical posture. A steady and comfortable pose. It's very important because if a body keeps on shaking and moving, the mind initially will move with it. So learning to stay still in one position for a long time. Pranayama, mastery of the pranic force, breathing practice. Pratyahar, recalling the senses. Because senses, they love to go outside, bringing them back. Pratyahar. So bringing the forces of the mind and senses to their natural resting place. Use them when need to, not otherwise. Dharna, concentration, restraining the mind, focusing the mind on a chosen object. That is dharna. Dhyan is meditation. Uninterrupted flow of concentration. So constant concentration leads to dhyan. And then what happens? Dhyan leads to next one, samadhya, spiritual absorption, perfect stillness, pristine state of mind. And this is a state where the object of cognition, the process of cognition, and the awareness of oneself, they have merged. Homogeneous awareness, it's also called. Asht means 8, Angani means limbs or components. So restraint, observance, physical posture, mastery of the pranic force, recalling the senses, concentration, meditation, and spiritual absorption are the 8 components of yoga. Okay, so goal is still the pragya or the vivekyati, but these are the ladder or the steps on the ladder we need to climb on. See, there are so many vasanas in us. From the countless lifetimes, we have a network of those vasanas. Among all those, there is a one vasana which is very strong, which is called Vipraya Gyan Vasana. You know what does it mean? Because this is so strong, we need a lot of practice to get rid of it. This is our uncompromising loyalty to our mistaken self-identity. It is so much embedded in us. So that's why these rishis, they gave the word Vipraya Gyan Vasana. We think we know so much, but we know it wrong. That is the breeding ground for all other sanskars cluttering our mind. So as we practice these 8 components of yoga, the impurities originating from avidya and nurtured by it just gradually gets destroyed. First it gets weakened, then it gets destroyed. So that's why just remember it will take some time. Because this Vipraya Gyan Vasana is so deep rooted. That's why even the so-called monks, they leave homes, leave the luxury of their beautiful, comfortable homes, go into the ashrams. But this Vipriya Gyan Vasana, because of that, they start comparing each other's progress. Or they get into useless arguments. They forget what the goal is. They just want to only show that how much I know or how many disciples I have. That is a Vipriya Gyan Vasana. So that's why Rishi Patanjali is giving us this very direct ladder to climb on. Do not get deviated. Do not lose yourself. And we'll see that he'll tell us there are external components to this Ashtanga and there are internal components. Practice the external components, they will help us to get rid ourselves of impurities, where the source is the external world. Because our body and our distorted behavior has been affected by this. And what are these impurities? Unhealthy lifestyle, environmental contamination, unnatural breathing, disturbed sleep, religious and ideological toxins. These are like just a few of them. And what helps us? Yam, niyam, asan, pranayam. They help us from these external contaminants. But the internal contaminants or internal components to this practice is dharana, dhyan, samadhi. Okay, and even pratyahar is like in between. Pratyahar also comes in there. Pratyahar helps us to work on the outside and inside also. And freedom, so these internal components, they help us attain the freedom from impurities that have been source of our mental world. Because there's an external world, there's an internal world. And what is the principal enemy in the internal world? Our sanskaras. Our own sanskaras. We are the one who put the impurity there. Or even the roaming tendencies of our mind. So these two categories of impurities always go in hand. In the presence of one, the other one will grow too. When we work on one, the other one will get destroyed too. See, just like a fear and anger, they are sure internal impurities, but they affect our outside also. So that's why Rishi Patanjali gave us this beautiful diagram here of Ashtanga. So external limbs of yoga directly affect our body, but our body affects our mind and vice versa. And we'll see in the next 26 sutras, Rishi Patanjali is addressing each of these beautifully, separately also, and he tells us how they apply, how we can apply them in our daily life also. So I think it's time for me to stop talking, and if you have any questions, so we'll address that, and then in 15 minutes or so, we'll take a break, and then we'll come back again. So thank you for listening, paying attention. Now your turn.
Manju Malhotra?
Namaste, Hershji. I don't have a question, but you just mentioned Gyan Vasana. Could you just define it one more time? Uncompromising something?
Uncompromising loyalty to our mistaken self-identity. See, we don't even mind arguing with our elders because we think we are so great. Or sometimes even our guru. This is so strong. Vipre Gyan Vasna. Okay, does it make sense, Manju? So loyalty, our loyalty is there, but loyalty
Yes, thank you.
is the mistaken self-identity. Oh, I know so much. I have studied so much. I have a degree bigger than you. But do the degrees define us? So that's why Vipre Gyan Vasana. Okay? So anybody else?
Dr. Chandra?
Yes, Dr. Chandra.
No, everything clear, SG. I have followed you. Such a beautiful session. I have no question at this point.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So anybody else?
Hershey,
Yes,
I
Neetu.
have a question. I don't know. It's probably a question that always comes in my mind that we are pure being, we are pure soul, and all these things are we are going back to that place of being a pure soul. But how is that? Why did we become impure over the time? Because if we were pure, why did we colored ourselves with the state that today we are not even accepting our true self?
Yeah, because of the root cause is ignorance. Ignorance, avidya. That's
Okay.
what we learned last time. Avidya really means you just forgot. And
I
that's
see.
why these rishis are giving us these practices to remember again.
Okay.
All we
Okay.
have to do is remember ourselves who we are. But
Uh-huh.
remembrance is so difficult for us.
Yeah.
And that's why I mentioned this Vipreya Gyan Vasana, that we are so attached to our identification, wrong identification.
Yeah.
I'm a man or a woman, rich, poor, this position, this family. We
Yeah.
identify with that more than our Atma, which is seven. So
Yeah.
we have to do the practice. It's sad to say that we have to do the practice, but we need to because we have gone so far away from the truth. That's why.
Yeah.
Avidya is the root cause. Okay.
Okay.
So Neetu, I would suggest that last couple of so and you can play that, listen to it,
Okay.
and if you have any questions, call me.
Sure. Sure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Jyoti, why do we have this echoing?
Don't know.
You don't know?
Manju?
Okay.
Manju has a question. Does that
Anybody else? Any question?
Manju? And then we can go to break and come back.
Yes,
at 30.
Hershey.
Yes.
So yes, just like you told Neetu, yes, this ignorance was also created, the Prakriti and the ignorance by God's, it's God's Prakriti, right?
Mhm.
So we were not expected to get trapped in that, huh? We were supposed to enjoy it and let it go, right?
Yeah.
We didn't create it. We can't create anything.
Yeah.
He gave us the mind and we created our misery out of it.
Right.
The choice was just to play and go away, yes,
Yes. Yes.
without owning
Yeah.
it.
Choice was to play and still remember who you are. It's just
Yeah.
like we have forgotten who we are. Okay.
Yeah.
We just, that's why I use that word. We have loyalty towards something which is so wrong.
Yes.
That's why I just purposely I said that word because we can understand this English language a little bit better.
Yes.
So we
So
just got to remember. We don't have to change anything. We got to remember.
that's right.
New.
So
So with
he
this
really
sadhana, we are just
Hershey, I want to
Mhm.
share one thing that was so powerful in my life with my guru. And it's so crazy. And that is rooted from the fear I'm experiencing now. And there was a time we were few people sitting, and he was ready to take us to the place where he was. Would you believe nobody said yes to that? I mean, we lost the boat.
Yes, that's
We
right.
didn't want to leave
Because
anything.
we are so attached. Yeah, we are so attached to this, what we know.
Yeah.
Something which we can touch. We are afraid to go into the unknown realm.
Yeah. That's what happened. None of us.
There have been
And today
stories.
I think,
Yeah,
yeah.
because first is a lack of trust.
Yeah.
The second is the attachment to this unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the same thing happened in the scriptures also. They talk about Prahlad.
Uh-huh.
Prahlad was a king. Time came for him to go. And God came. He was a realized yogi, did so much tapasya.
Uh-huh.
And even Narsingh Bhagwan came there to protect him. So when was the time for him to go, he
Yeah.
said, I am a king over here, and I want to make sure that some of these people or all of these people come with me to that
Okay.
lok. It's a God's lok. So God said, they are not ready. They won't come. He said, let me
Okay.
try. So he sent his people to ask people who is ready to go.
Uh-huh.
Nobody agreed. No, we still have to.
Oh,
My son is not married. My
yeah.
wife is pregnant. I just started a business. How can I leave right now? Nobody's
Yeah.
ready to go. And then Prahlad said, okay, all right, if not the human beings, maybe the animals.
Okay.
I want to just help these animals. Somebody should come along so that they just get liberated. They
Uh-huh.
asked the animals also. Nobody agreed. Finally, there was a one pig.
Mm-hmm.
Pig said, sure, I'll come if all my family comes. So God said, okay,
Oh,
all right. Your wife, your children, they can come. But he said, I have another question. Will I get the shit which I get over here or not?
uh-huh.
So he was still attached to what he was eating.
Oh boy.
So these stories, they just uh, bring the point in our mind that how we are attached to this unreal.
Yeah, I
The
agree.
gurus and God's words, we don't take it seriously.
No, no.
We think something we see right now, something we can touch right now, it is more real, even though we know it's not real. We
Yeah,
know it will be taken away from us. We know that we will get bored with it, but still we think that no, maybe a little
yeah,
longer.
yeah,
We
yeah.
know that this is not real.
Ashji,
Yeah.
can I say something here?
Yes, please.
Patanjali,
Keeps on growing. So this stretches the range of our enemies to an almost limitless size. And when we see the enemies on one side, fear is there. And animosity, fear is still we can understand at a physical level, but animosity is more subtle than physical or verbal retaliation against a person or a group of with the potential to harm us. There is a precise term in the yogic literature, abhidroh, abhidroh, which means intense aversion that captures our mind from every direction. Abhidroh. This is like a mental condition that creates anger towards everybody else. We want to protect ourselves and we just end up showing our anger. Abhidroh. So animosity is always preceded by a strong sense of self-identity. So anyone or anything that threatens our self-identity, we think that they are our enemy. That's why ahimsa is embracing the practice of non-animosity. towards all beings, all the time and in every respect. So we got to look in our mind. Do we have this ahimsa? No animosity towards anybody at any time? Other four restraints, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, and aparigraha, they're all rooted in ahimsa. So if you work on this ahimsa, you'll see that others will have a control over very easily. Because when we are not established in ahimsa, in other words, if we have not conquered the primitive urge of self-preservation, we find ourselves under enormous pressure to manipulate our conscious, even fabricate our evidence, obstruct the justice, and do everything possible to justify our intentions and deeds. And we are bound to commit hinsa, violence. So this is like a very subtle enemy of ours, hinsa. So that's why Rishi Patanjali, when he talked about the restraints, he put ahimsa as the first one. Because we think that the hinsa, the violence, is a strength. But this is driven by our subhuman tendencies. Subhuman. We need to rise above this. This is very destructive. And satya, so if we are under the spell of hinsa, we'll have to tell a lie. And to hide one lie, we tell 10 more lies. In the process, we damage our conscience, we hurt others, we disrupt the peace in both our inner and outer worlds. And this is how we fall from satya, truthfulness. And once we fall from satya, we engage in satya, that's a stealing. And that's how we get caught up in brahmacharya. Opposite of brahmacharya, brahmacharya, sensuality. And from there, we just go down to the obsession of hoarding, accumulating, parigraha. So you see how it started from the violence, animosity. So that's the root cause of it. Remaining four restraints, truthfulness, non-stealing, self-control, non-possessiveness are rooted in ahimsa. Remember that. Non-violence. Sometimes we think that non-violence, yeah, I don't hurt anybody. I have never even raised my hand on anybody. How about your words? How about your thoughts? How about the fear? Remember that. So both ahimsa and hinsa are extremely subtle. Remember that. It's not a physical alone. By the time it reaches a physical, we have just gone down the road. It's very subtle. So to comprehend the dynamism of ahimsa and hinsa, we need a highly refined and perceptive mind. Ordinary people have no capacity even to detect the element of violence at a certain level. So we need to think it through. We got to pay attention to it. We got to dissect our own mind, our own actions, our own words. So embracing the practice of non-violence at the subtle level is beyond the scope of ordinary seekers. So we got to be a serious seeker. And the phenomena of lying, stealing, excessive sense gratification, obsession, with worldly possessions. These all hurt us. But sometimes we think everybody else is doing it. But that's now a serious yoga student looks at it. I'm on this ladder. I want to stay on this ladder. So we need to practice all 5 restraints together. Together, actually. So it's not just one at a time, all 5 of them. So the practice of the 5 restraints is the foundation for a wholesome life. We don't want a piecemeal practice, wholesome practice. In spite of the differences in our spiritual, ideological, or professional orientation, we have a common goal. You have to remember that. Living a healthy, happy, fulfilling life. That's how a yoga student, yoga Abhyasi, looks at it. And how these restraints serve as the ground for achieving this common goal, Patanjali introduces the next sutra. Jati, desh, kal, समय अनवच्छिन्नः सार्वभौमः महाव्रतम्. Jati, that means class, race, species, ethnicity. That's a jati. Desh, place, country, location. Kal means time. Samay means circumstance. Anavachinnaha, that which is not affected or confined. Anavachinna. Sarvabhauma, universal. Pertaining to every aspect of ground. Or you can say like a vantage point. See, sarv means all, bhom means ground. Okay, like a bhumi. We saw that word before. Mahavratam, the great vow, the highest observance. Maha means great. Vow means, also means a guiding principle. So these 5 restraints in verse number 30 are not affected by the factors of class, place, time, and circumstance. They are universally applicable and constitute the great vow. So that means all of us, no matter where we are, anybody who wants to have the Vivek Khyati, anybody who wants to know who I am, anybody who wants to attain that goal of life, these vows need to be followed. Okay? So it's not just for the certain sect or certain gender or certain age. No. Or for a certain place all the time. Yoga sadhana can be divided into 2 major categories. Yoga for aspiring yogis, yoga sadhaks, and yoga for those who are accomplished, the yogis. Aspiring yogis, yoga abhyasis must assess their current physical, emotional, intellectual capacities before undertaking the practice. They can either do the mild, intermediate, or intense yogic disciplines, which is appropriate for them. But accomplished yogis must maintain the highest degree of discipline. So this verse is for the second categories. For example, there are 2 standards for practicing ahimsa. Killing a human being is a murder, but killing a fish is not. Killing a fish is a spiritual offense. Person on the path of spirituality will not kill fish. strict vegetarian will not kill fish, but fishermen will. Hunting in and around a shrine is an offense, but hunting in the forest is not. There are different laws. Every day, if a soldier shoots somebody on the street, that's an offense. But it's not an offense for a soldier to kill an enemy on the battlefield. In fact, they get medals for that. So in the early stages of yoga sadhana, these 5 restraints, the non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, self-control, non-possessiveness, can be practiced while paying attention to the jati, professional identity, desh, place, kal, samay, circumstance. But in higher stages, there is no room for compromise. So that's why I said this particular verse is very strictly for a person who is serious. We are expected to embrace these restraints without heeding our class, identity, place, time, or circumstance. In higher states, not only we need to practice these in action, we must practice them in speech and in thoughts. We must observe the subtle motives behind our thoughts, speech and actions, the motive also. The degree of precision and perfection requires supremely refined vigilance. We don't want to say that others are doing it, so I'm going to do it too. No. A serious aspirant, a serious yogi takes this very seriously. The practice begins with cultivating these virtues. And what happened with a consistent practice, self-reflection, we become established in them. And Rishi Patanjali is going to tell us, how will you know that you are established in it? He's going to tell us, if you are firmly established in this, what is the outcome? Even though you are not being firmly established or cultivating these qualities to get those powers, but those powers give us the indication that my practice is working. From that standpoint, we got to continuously raise the bar as we become stronger and more enlightened. That's what we need to do. We got to intensify our sadhana. It is important to remember this sutra. These are, in that sense, Mahavrat. These are great vows which we take as yogis. Then in the next verse he says, the niyams also. So these were, Mahavrat were those yams, the restraint, and now the niyams, the observances. Shauch, Santosh, Tapaha, Swadhyay, Ishwar Pranidhan, Niyama. Shauch means purity, cleanliness. The cleanliness to the level where the light shines. Santosh, contentment, satisfaction. Lack of wanting, lack of desiring. Santosh. Tapaha, austerity, penance. Standing against the sense cravings. That is tapa. Senses will say, have me, but controlling them. Swadhyay, self-reflection, study of the scriptures, self-study. Ishwar pranidhan. Ishwar means the guide, the Lord, highest divinity. Ishwar, we have learned about that word. Pranidhanani, complete surrender. This also means offering your actions and the fruits of the actions to the divine being. So trustful surrender to the highest divinity, Ishwar Pranidhan. Niyama, the discipline not to be ignored. Observances. So purity, contentment, austerity, self-study, and trustful surrender to Ishwar are the observances. If you remember the beginning of this chapter, Kriya Yoga had what? Three of the last three of these five. Tap, Swadhyaya, Ishwar, Pranidhan. That was a Kriya Yoga. Okay. So in the last two sutras, Patanjali describes 5 yams. Now he is describing the 5 niyams. 5 niyams. So with these 5 niyams, observances, he lays the foundation for the remaining 6 limbs of yoga. What are the other 6? Asan, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So if you want to attain samadhi, or even if you want to practice meditation or concentration, but if you are not doing these, you are not going to go anywhere. Your practice is not going to get enriched. So these are the first 2 steps on the ladder. So shauch is of 2 kinds, remember. Shauch means purity, 2 kinds, external and internal. Maintaining high standards of hygiene, purifying our living space, keeping our body free of toxins, are examples of the external purification. That's needed. And internal purification, keeping our mind relatively free of karmic impressions, and the inner unrest propelled by them. So in other words, keeping your mind calm, keeping your mind clean. So outer cleaning and inner cleaning both. That is shauch. Santosh, not desiring more than we have. Contentment or santosh is a mental state and a process of being happy with what we have. Often we see people want. They don't enjoy what they have. Okay. So being happy with what you have. Without contentment, let me tell you, without contentment, we will never be able to slow the ever spinning wheel of karam sanskar chakra, the wheel of this life and death. This is must. Santosh. Because otherwise this process keeps on going. It has been going on and it will keep on going. Because these sanskaras are the one which motivate us to engage in action. And then further we get the fruits and we strengthen our mental impressions with the fruits. So santosh, santosh, happy with what you have and do the practice. Tap is withstanding the pain caused by the pressure of the senses and our self-imposed resistance to that pressure until we reach the highest. Because there's a constant tug of war between the good and the pleasant, between our discrimination and our desires, between the forces of our surrender and the forces of attachment. So that's why cultivating the capacity to withstand this pain and adhering to our resolution is tapa. Tap. We say, observing this very classic vow. It can start with the food. I am going to be strictly vegetarian. I want to make sure that nothing gets harmed because of my intake. That's a tapa. I will not say a word where somebody gets hurt. That's a tapa. So we just keep on increasing the intensity of the tapa. Okay, every religion talks about it. Tapa. It shines our personality. It just cleans our mind. So we got to bring more and more tapa. We have talked about it when we started this chapter last time. Swadhyay involves studying spiritually uplifting scriptures. It's not just studying any book. It's uplifting scriptures. And meditating on those sacred mantras. Because study of the scriptures connects us with the experience of the previous seekers. Rishi Patanjali said it. We study it, we understand it, we practice it, then we'll get united too. Having faith in them. Having faith in the words of these rishis. But ultimately we got to practice it. And surrendering our actions and their fruits to Ishwar means maintaining a constant awareness of the truth that a higher reality is always with us. God is not somewhere away. Sure, in the seventh heaven God is there, but God is here also and in between also. When we say Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha, what are we saying? God, you are here on this earth. God, you are up there in the sky. And God, you are there also where I can't even imagine. Beyond my comprehension, you are everywhere, but you are also inside me. We got to remind ourselves that we are not subject to death and decay. And that experiencing immortality is our birthright. We got to believe in it, remind ourselves. So this is what surrender to Ishwar means. Because our karmic factors, they do force us to remain caught in the cycle of birth and death. But Ishwar Pranidhan is a state of freedom from doubt and fear. So this is like a trustful surrender to Ishwar. Ishwar, I don't see you, but I believe you are with me. That's how we turn our mind inward. And that's how we attain freedom from all obstacles. So these 5 yams and 5 niyams are subtle. On the surface, people say they constitute a set of yogic ethics. But when we do the deeper analysis, it reveals that each of these restraints and observances, they are very independently also, they are very powerful practice. Mastering even in one of them will accelerate our growth or our movement towards samadhi. And disregarding any of them will definitely prevent us from moving forward. If somebody says, no, I'm going to be truthful, I'm going to keep on hurting people, I'll have animosity, or I'm going to keep on hoarding, that will definitely prevent you from growth. And how to master these powerful practices, cultivate these great virtues? Let's look at next sutra. In fact, next two sutras, they go together because these practices are so subtle. So Rishi Patanjali is giving us two sutras so that we can understand the importance of these 10 yams and the niyams. 33. Vitark badhne pratipaksh bhavanam. Vitark means afflicting thoughts. That means the thoughts full of doubt, contradictions, painful thoughts. That's vitark. Badhne means checking, blocking, arresting. Badhne. So arrest afflicting thoughts. That's vitark badhne. Or block the thoughts which are full of conflict. Block those. Pratipaksh, opposite. Counteracting. Bhavanam, thinking, contemplating. Like a willful thinking. That's bhavana. To arrest afflicting thoughts, cultivate thoughts opposed to them. Okay, it's just like as long as we have anger and greed, and as long as we are confused about the motivation behind our actions, we'll have a negative mind. So we got to work on these. We know that if I have anger, I am not going to progress. And sometimes this fear and anger comes from competing with others. We have to conquer and attempt to eliminate these negative feelings. We got to cultivate a tendency to collaborate with others, to support them, to embrace them. So instead of thinking that they are on the opposite side, they are on your side. The afflictions are extremely subtle and deeply entrenched in our mind. So whenever we study something like this, we got to remember the afflictions also, because we are working on our afflictions. There are numerous negative tendencies. They are very powerful to agitate our mind, disturb our inner balance. So according to this sutra, Vitark Badne Pratipaksh Bhavnam, the practice of non-violence requires us to arrest our violent tendencies by cultivating the thoughts of opposite. Okay, we want to hurt somebody? Think about it. Cultivate a friendliness. You want to steal? Think how the other will get hurt. So not passively, actively. Because passive non-violence has no power to extinguish the fire of violence. So non-violence has to be active also. So we got to just not keep these qualities like under the carpet. We got to bring this actively in our life. It's just like if somebody, you are in a business with somebody, and you think they're stealing from you. You just want to hurt them back. But have the thoughts opposite of that. Just think that I trusted this person for years. He has been my friend. Let me just talk to him. Let me sort it out instead of right away hurting that person. Instead of thinking that I can never imagine he would steal from me. Just to go a little step further and talk it out. Because otherwise there's always a desire to punish. Also a desire for vengeance. And there's no justice there then. So in the conventional practice of non-violence, we are not let to entertain a stream of structured, organized, non-violent thoughts. Because we have often heard that when someone slaps us on the right cheek, give your left cheek. Often you have heard about that. But this approach to non-violence does not free us from pain, nor does it purify our mind. But over here, we need to purify our mind. So we must design a system of practice that neutralizes the force of violence. Step by step, point by point. That's why I said talking, discussing, finding it out, giving the other person some chance to explain. Because in violence, what happens? The mind is churning out. The negative thoughts involuntarily come out. So to practice non-violence, we have to train our mind to churn out positive thoughts. That is Pratipaksha Bhavana. So this opposite thoughts, for all of them, we have to cultivate. We have to remind ourselves, life is too precious. In life, I need to attain that goal. I don't want to be consumed by friends and foes and loss and gain. I have already lost a lot of time. I don't want to lose any more time. So this needs to be practiced. So in worldly matters also, in family matters also, personal matters also, because we don't want to lose the pristine nature of our mind. We have to keep this mind clean. And now in the other verse, he's further explaining this Pratipaksha Bhavana. So these two verses, number 33 and 34, Pratipaksha Bhavana he's talking about. He says, use this. So guidelines he is giving for designing more comprehensive practice to nullify the effects. Because we have been living with this from life after life, with violence, lies, stealing, no self-control. So that's why we need a stronger practice. So that's why he has given in detail to us. So now look at 34. Vitarkaha, hinsa adyaha, kritkarit anumoditaha, lobh, krodh, moh, purvakaha, mridu, madhya, adhimatra, dukh, agyan, anant phala, iti pratipaksha bhavanam. Pretty big sutra. He has covered quite a bit in here. Vitarkaha, afflicting thoughts. We talked about it in the last verse. Hinsa adya, violence, etc. So beginning with violence. So hinsa, right? And then rest of them. Krit means done. Karit means made to do. Anumodita, consented. Lobh means greed. Krodh means anger. Moha means confusion. Purvakaha, preceded by. Mridu is mild, like a gentle. Madhya means intermediate. Adhimatra, intense. are exceedingly intense. Dukh is pain, agyan, ignorance, misunderstanding. Anant, endless, phala, fruits, results. Iti means thus, pratipaksh, opposite, counteracting, bhavanam, thinking, contemplating. So he says, violence and the others are afflicting thoughts. We put these thoughts into action by ourselves. Sometimes we do violence ourselves or through others or by implied consent. We just watch somebody else doing it. Sometimes we do it ourselves. Sometimes we just make others do it for us, or we just watch only. These thoughts are propelled by greed, anger, or confusion. They are mild, intermediate, or intense. We nullify these afflicting thoughts by realizing they bear unending fruit of pain and ignorance. So at every level of our life, it's not just something we do it ourselves, but even when we watch something is happening, and it's our duty to stop it, we should. That's why I said it's an active role we need to play. Otherwise, what happens? We keep on creating karmas after karmas after karmas. That's why he said unending fruit of pain. Dukha, agyan, anant phala. So if we think that we are unhappy right now, or we are some fruits which we are bearing right now, they are painful, remember, this is all very fixed law over here. It's a law of karma. So we need to work on it. So he is outlining the dynamics of afflicting thoughts and destructive actions, which result from those thoughts. Because first they are thoughts. Even before thoughts, sure, there are sanskars and the vasanas and all that. But thoughts, they have solidified. Then comes the actions, then comes the fruit. So we got to just take a responsibility for it. Okay, and he is very clearly saying that acts of violence are instigated by greed, anger, confusion, or combination of these. So we need to work on these. So it's a really beautiful definition where he is elaborating so that we can cultivate the opposite thoughts. We don't want to suffer anymore. We want to end this cycle. Our goal is different. I want to evolve now. The desire to eliminate our negative tendencies, both little and big, begins with contemplating the unavoidable consequences of these tendencies. Okay, so if when we know that, yeah, this is what's going to happen, I don't want to do it. We do that all the time. If I see something which will make me sick, we keep away from it. At the physical level, grosser level, we do that. But at the same time, we got to look at it at the mental level. That's where the contemplation is. We got to remember a violent thought or violent action. It has three distinct stages actually. It drains vitality. It inflicts pain. And it can cause death. And these karmic consequences will also emerge in three distinct stages actually. Somebody has killed somebody. So the killer must suffer from lack of vitality, strength, and stamina. He must inherit a mind full of fear. He must suffer from low self-esteem. These are all consequences of that action. We don't look at the consequences of the actions, we just do only the actions. He must suffer from low self-esteem. And lacking self-trust or self-esteem, he must rely on the opinions of others and remain indecisive. Because he has inflicted pain, the killer must be born. So it does not end there. He must be born in a species in which, by design of nature, life is painful. Because he has caused death, the killer must suffer a prolonged and painful death. So it's like a graphic description of the actions which are done without thinking it through. So that's why Rishi Patanjali is telling us, use this Pratipaksha Bhavana to conquer these negative tendencies. Okay, so we can just go on and on about it, but just think about it and contemplate on it. Maybe someday we can just take one sutra and spend a lot of time on it. But for today's purpose, I just wanted to go over this. And let's move on to the next one. Verse number 35. Now he is telling us, if somebody is firmly established in non-violence, what happens? Firmly established, not just a little bit practice of non-violence. He says, ahimsa pratisthayam tat sanidhau vair tyaga. Ahimsa, non-violence, pratisthya, upon being established, like a firmly established. Tat means that, sanidhau, the presence of. Vair means animosity. Tyaga means absence, renunciation. In the company of a yogi established in non-violence, animosity vanishes. So if you are truly established in the principle of non-violence, the feeling of animosity in those around you will vanish. So it's just like those kind of vibrations are emanating from you. They will affect the other person. Not only the human beings, to the birds and the animals also. That's why you have seen the pictures that in the presence of a yogi, from the same pond, lion and the deer or the lamb, they are drinking water. Presence of that yogi. So in this verse, this is what he's telling us. So we got to keep on working on these violent thoughts or animosity in us. And that means that not just the thoughts, the words also, the actions also. So in the next 10 sutras, Patanjali is making a series of bold statements actually. Bold statements. If you are established in truthfulness, what happens? If you are established in non-stealing, what happens? Or in a self-control, cleanliness, he talks about all of them. So because our core being is absolutely pure and self-luminous. Because sometimes it's very difficult for people who are not familiar with the yogic philosophy. So this we got to remember. Maybe we have not experienced it. Maybe we don't even have a glimpse of it. But this is the truth. We have been given a wonderful tool, the mind. It's a wonderful tool to discover our relationship with Ishwar, the Lord, and free ourselves from the seemingly unending cycle of transmigration. That's why he just keeps on telling us all these are tools he's giving us. He says this luminosity is in you. So work use these. So right now he's telling us about the non-violence. He's describing the ultimate fruit of ahimsa in this verse, ultimate fruit, the elimination of animosity. Because violence is accompanied by fear and anger, which are caused and propelled by desire and aversion. And desire and aversion comes from attachment. So again, this is linked with all these afflictions. And all our possessions, they are contained in most refined possession of all, self-identity, our family, property, religion, intellectual achievement, professional reputation. That's all asmita. That's also part of the affliction. So this is how animosity is born too. So he's just telling us that remember all this and become established in non-violence, and you'll have this as a fruit. Because you are not afraid of anybody, nobody is afraid of you. You are only emanating the positivity. They feel it. And inside the core of everybody else is also the same. That's how you connect. So this is how the maturity of the state of ahimsa depends solely on the practice of pratipaksha bhavana. To remember this and just practice it in our meditation completely, the power of ahimsa, power. And perfection of this non-violence, it is definitely an outcome of the highest level of spiritual achievement. It will arise, you will see that, it will arise as we enter deeper levels of meditation. And it will mature when we taste samadhi. A little taste of samadhi also, you will see that. What is there to be afraid of? Why do I worry? So in the context of our day-to-day practice, the principle of non-violence is a powerful tool for transforming ourselves as a good human being, because we like to be in the company of people who will not hurt us. And it also accelerates our growth, both as individuals, as members of the society also. We don't like when we see the violence, physical violence outside on the streets. We don't like the violence in the families. So as a yoga practitioner, we got to bring it at a deeper level so that we can really shed this light, the purity, no matter where we go. Where we go. So I think it's time. So we'll start next retreat with verse number 36, and we'll try to finish this chapter in next retreat. So now if anybody has a question, comment, Jyoti.
Nobody yet.
Nobody?
Hershey,
Yes, Neetu.
I'm sorry I missed the beginning of your talk. I know I heard the rest of it about non-violence. Was it all about non-violence, this whole Hansa and Ahamsa?
Yeah, it was like that, but it is, did you listen to that Pratipaksha Bhavana?
Yeah, I've been listening to the whole thing. I just missed the first few minutes where you had started talking about the Yama and Niyama.
Yeah. Actually, before that, I talked about the niyam, and before that, I talked about that it's a universal vrat.
Okay.
that?
No, I
Because
didn't hear that.
Patanjali said it's universal. It's not like anybody who wants to attain this higher stage, these need to be practiced.
Okay.
No
Okay.
matter which religion you belong to, which gender you belong to, which place you are, you got to. This is must.
Okay.
They're must. That's why every faith, every religion, every sect, that they have a part of their program, I should say.
Uh-huh.
Whether there's a commandments, as a commandments they say, or whether they say this is a dharma, whatever they say, but these are all part of it. Okay, because
Okay.
these are universal. Okay.
So mostly I was hearing about non-violence. So was the emphasis is about the non-violence in the mental level?
Non-violence is the first one, and rest of them are connected with it.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay. If we are established in non-violence, he's going to talk about more others also later on. You will see that
Okay.
next time. But if we are non-violent, we don't have to
Okay.
lie. We
Okay.
don't have to steal,
Yes.
right? We don't have to hoard. Rest four, I'm not talking about the niyams, I'm talking about the yams.
Yeah. Yeah.
Satya, stay, brahmacharya, aprigraha. These are like the last four are the offshoots of the non-violence.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
That's why it's so important, being non-violent.
I see.
Okay.
Okay.
First,
Okay.
work on that. See, just like I talked about avidya. From avidya comes asmita and rag and dvesh and abhinivesh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we get rid of the root, the
Right.
branches they'll wither away.
Okay.
If
Okay.
I want to get rid of some weed outside, and if I
Yeah.
just pluck the leaves only, pretty soon it will grow again.
Okay.
I need to remove the roots out. So
Mhm.
that's why Rishi Patanjali says the root of the others is hinsa, violence. Become non-violent in your words, actions, deeds.
Okay, but that also is connected with avidya, right? Because of ignorance, we
They
do
are all
all.
affected with they're all related to avidya. That's why I just keep bringing the afflictions there. So do
Yeah.
not forget the afflictions part.
Okay.
They're
Okay.
all connected. Yes.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
a
Okay.
diagram.
I know.
Okay.
So,
Good.
so
Yeah. Okay, Jyoti.
Sorry.
Oh, what are you saying? Yeah.
sorry.
No,
I was saying if we start working on avidya, like in the first hour, we discuss about avidya first. So if we start to purify our mind, automatically these things will start dropping off. Won't you say so?
It has the effect, but if we do both, it's more
Okay.
powerful.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
We got to work on with both hands.
Okay. 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 Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Jyoti.
Nita.
So, Hashi, you said on 30th, the verse number 30, um, first part of the yogi can be like a soldier. He can kill on the front, but not on the street, right? And you said, but the second stage of the yogi does not have any place for all these kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So all the time, everywhere, with everybody.
So that means if there is a soldier, he will have to change the profession?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Okay. Because then that's part of his profession to kill.
Yeah, but then what happens is the nature helps you. You are drawn towards toward a profession where you don't have to kill.
Okay.
Or even if you kill,
Mhm.
even if you are a soldier, just like a Lord Krishna told Arjun,
Arjun to
I'll
kill.
protect you. You remember me and do it. Do your duty. Become a Karam Yogi.
Okay.
You are
So,
not doing it for yourself.
okay.
So that kind of a thinking also. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Thanks.
Profession comes secondary. Our main goal is
Him.
to become one with that.
Right. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Nishta?
Yes, Jyoti.
Nishta?
Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
I wanted to find out, I don't know, because I missed the preceding session. So is it on the website?
Yes.
And does it
Yes.
identify itself as first, second, and third?
Jyoti can answer that. Jyoti?
Yeah, it's the first workshop, second workshop. And then,
Okay.
yeah.
Does it say Yoga Sutras, Jyoti?
Yes.
Yoga
Perfect.
Sutras.
Okay,
So
thank
Nishtha,
you.
Yoga Sutras, first, second, third. So,
Hanji.
and do we have a book also, Nishtha?
Hanji.
Okay, all right, because it's easier to follow if you have a book with you. Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad you came. Thank you.
No, actually, I don't have the book, so I'll order it.
Order this book. This will be, most of the people have this book. I mean, there's so many translations, but Swami Sachidanand has done a good job.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
like with the modern English, and the Sanskrit is there, and the literal translation and some elaboration. This is from Yogaville, Virginia. So if you can look at it, and just Swami Sachidananda.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Poonam?
Harshji,
Yes, Poonam.
I was
Unmute.
You have to unmute.
Poonam,
Unmute.
unmute yourself, please.
Is it unmuted now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There is this word pratipaksh bhavna, and he's saying that when a thought of anger or anything like that, ahimsa comes in your mind, create an opposite thought.
Yeah.
But my question was, when we do it practically, we don't lose that thought, it stays there, and maybe by the next time it adds some more power to it, because if already it's sitting and the next time when it comes it has added some more. So it really hasn't gone away. We might have fooled the mind for a short time, but it never goes away if we have not eliminated. So I hope he's giving us other ways to do it later on, because this seems, it works for a very short time, it works for that moment, but it does not go away because it stays hidden right there, sitting right there.
Yeah. No, actually, you're right, it does stay there, but with the help of the light of our inner self, that's the one which will really extinguish all this. Okay, so we got to, in the outer world, sure, we got to follow these principles, but at the same time we got to meditate also. So we are working on both fields, because if we just keep on meditating only and not using this pratipaksh bhavna on these external things, because these restraints are always me versus the society, me versus somebody else. So I got to work on that also. Otherwise, I just keep on accumulating more karmic impressions.
So the meditation hasn't reached the point where it should. So it is, that is also very preliminary, and this is also very at the beginning.
That's why this is a sadhana. This is like a very start of the sadhana. Okay, so work externally also, work internally also, and then you'll be established in a place where you will see that. You'll see that even the non-violent people, non-violent creatures, they'll become peaceful in your presence. I read a few years ago, I read about this yogi in Manhattan area. It was in some of the yoga journals. The story was published in it, that he was teaching yoga. It was a long time ago when yoga was not a buzzword in this country, but he was teaching it over there, and he had a little place, and somebody came. They thought that this guy must have a lot of money and tried to rob them. And this person was just sitting over there. The person came with the intention of robbing. When he saw him, he started meditating with him. So that was a clear example of the power of this yogi. So even in this country, Sarvabhauma, not only in the jungles, but in the busy streets of Manhattan also.
So I get that use whatever tool you can use at that particular moment
Yes.
to keep on track. That's what it is.
Yeah. But your point is good. Yeah, we got to externally use this, internally keep on meditating so that we are well equipped to reach our final goal. Okay, anybody else? No? But I really appreciate you guys sitting and listening and paying attention to this Yoga Sutras. So if no questions, so we'll end the class, and then next retreat, as I said earlier, we will finish this chapter and I'll give you some time to chew it, absorb it, practice it, and we'll just work on other topics. And the first topic will be on pranayams. Several kinds of pranayams. We'll practice those. I'll give you how and why and who should practice. So we'll spend about 3 hours on pranayams alone. So, and then other topics. There are a lot of other general topics which we don't have enough time. Normally Wednesday we do it, but Wednesday 45 minutes, I really cannot go into the detail. But we'll use these special Saturdays to dig deeper into these topics. Okay.
Hershji?
Yes, Sujata.
I have a suggestion.